Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Frame Found podcast. I am your host, Chris Tinsley. For this episode today, we are going to be talking about how email ruined communication. I guess you can kind of just say maybe that's part of like the hook of this episode, but what it really is specifically about is kind of just how the whole advent of texting based, like text based communication has really kind of created a damper on the, I guess, call it efficiency and effectiveness of teams. I think just broad strokes, generally speaking, I don't think that it's the most conducive to how humans actually communicate with each other. I've noticed this throughout the years with multiple teams. Just I don't know, for a while now. Like all I'm thinking in my head right now is I feel like this concept of text based communication isn't really all that old. The first thing that comes to mind is, I guess, when the internet like boom became big. Specifically with America Online. I don't know. I just remember back in the late 90s seeing all those newspapers on the driveways with the CD-ROMs of installing AOL on your computer or whatever, right? And I don't know. I think maybe that was like 1998 or 1999. But that's when like the whole concept of email like really took off. The whole like you've got mail thing, right? Um, and then also the instant like messenger that came along with AOL. And I think it's just weird. I mean, it's 2025, 2026 right now. So it's like it's only, I don't know, it's maybe like it's a 30-year-old concept, which I guess now that I think about it, maybe that is kind of like a lengthy amount of time. But I don't know. My thought is this. I think maybe we're just crossing a precipice right now where the complexity of work has increased so much that that means of communication is no longer effective. I think at a certain point in time, it's definitely convenient, right? So make no mistake about that. Text-based communication is definitely convenient, but I think that there's a lot of trade-offs. There's a lot of costs associated with communicating in that way, especially, as scale increases, as complexity increases. And yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's an important thing. At the end of the day, work is comprised of people, and you need people to communicate with one another. And I just think, having said all that, I just I think it's important to talk about how we communicate like with each other. And when thinking about that, it's just I realized that you know there's there's a kind of, call it a blocker, right? Where this whole concept of, again, text-based like communication, there's a lot of hidden costs surrounding that. And this episode, was created to kind of unpack all of that. So let's get into the questions. When did we start believing that writing the perfect message mattered more than actually communicating? I think this is an interesting question. It's, okay, so I think, and you're going to hear me kind of say this throughout the episode, like when I was putting together these questions, it's all really tying back to what I at least see from running through these questions. It's all tying back to like one thing, and it's just the fact that everybody wants to be heard. And so I think there's been this there's been a focus on writing the perfect like message, because who doesn't want to be heard in what they're trying to say? Otherwise, what's the point in even speaking about whatever, right? And I guess when did we start believing that writing the perfect message mattered more than actually communicating? I don't know. When I read that question back, I just think that maybe we just lost the skill set of what it means to communicate in person. I don't know. I've seen it with a lot of like companies and organizations, partners, just throughout all of the years where, there's a lot going on, complexity's high, scale's high. People don't have time to have a conversation, and so it's a lot of like, hey, just send me an email and I'll get back to you. Which I think, it's important to consider each specific context, in the sense that if the topic is a straightforward topic, no problem there. But God forbid it becomes like a really complicated topic of that has a lot of like nuance associated to it. What's going to happen is there's going to be a follow-up question to it, right? And so now a volley is going to ensue of like, here's a response, and then the response is a question, then you have to respond back, creates another question, and it just kind of becomes this endless loop, so to say. And so I think nobody really likes answering a bunch of messages. I don't know. I think we can talk about it in the rest of this episode, but I also think that a lot of people don't have a lot of time for like conversation. But that's also an issue too, because our skill set when it comes to efficiently communicating, and especially in a very effective way, I feel like that's kind of dropped off a cliff, especially since the advent of text-based communication. So even as I like say all this and I think about it out loud, I think maybe these are just skill sets that we need to like sharpen, considering each of the contexts, right? Like, I feel like people were getting really like fed up with speech-based communication, that when email and instant like messaging came along, we then opted for the convenient means, which then became email and instant like messaging. But because we still, at the end of the day, principally speaking, just don't know how to articulate our thoughts in a succinct way, you're going to inevitably run into those same problems with the text-based like communication, which spawns this obsession of writing the perfect communication, right? But then that's taking time out of your day. That person has to read it. They have questions, right? Because you're not actually being able to kind of communicate in an efficient way. So now when you go the route of the text-based like communication, now frustration starts to increase. So when I just take a step back and I look at the two, I guess call it like modes of communication, it's just at the end of the day, we are having a hard time effectively communicating amongst one another. And the fix is not changing the mode. The fix is knowing what is the best practice for communicating, whether that be in a speech-based exchange or a text like based exchange. So yeah. How did this send and pray dynamic turn every interaction into a miniature performance? How did this send and pray dynamic turn every interaction into a miniature performance? Again, this is kind of going back to that common thread that I'm finding, is that everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants their point to be, taken into consideration or just understood. I think also, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking back at that question too. I do think that for some archetypes, for some like personalities, some personas, I guess you could say, like there is a level of performance in it where, I don't know. It's like sounding like some. It's like trying to sound like some like great like orator or author of sorts in these email communications, even though the topic itself could be something like mundane, like upgrading hardware in Office, right? Um, I think that is a whole different um, kind of thing, or maybe it's not. I mean, how did this send and pray dynamic turn every interaction into a miniature performance? I mean, off the bat, it is maybe there's this misunderstanding that your message has to be performative so that it's entertaining, so that the person feels like more apt to read it. I don't know. I'm like looking back at my career working with certain like partners, clients, teams, and man, I don't know. Okay, so this is okay. So I think in one vein, when you're working like an operations based role, I feel like a lot of people up and down the chain of command really appreciate very succinct to the point communications. I think when you're working with maybe certain like other roles that are more strategic in nature, um, not so much strategic. I don't know. I guess what I'm just trying to say is like maybe there's a different persona that likes more in depth. Almost, it's almost like a dissertation, right? So I think maybe some people might receive that well. Um, Damn. Okay, so this just spawned a whole other, like call it like pod or group of episodes. But I think much like you need to know how to, not like you're not going to speak to the same, you're not going to speak in the same way to everybody. That's just not how it like works in life. I mean, like the way that you speak to your doctor is like a different thing than you speak to a colleague, like versus your boss, like versus your family members. We all speak in a different way, considering the contexts. And so, I don't know. I think, how did this send and pray dynamic turn every interaction into a miniature performance? Um, Again, I think just looking, and I know I've read that question like a bunch of times because it's just spawning a bunch of different kind of ideas here. Um, yeah, I think it just turned it into a miniature performance because I think maybe there's just this thought that a performative communication is more likely to be read and more likely to be understood. And I don't think that that is always true. I think it's contextual, and I think it's just important for people to consider that. What does it do to your confidence when you're always hoping your tone lands instead of owning it? Okay, off the cuff, first thing that comes to mind is when you're always hoping your tone lands, like when you wrote that communication and you sent it out there, if you're thinking in the back of your head hoping that the tone lands, that the message is received, it just creates anxiety. Like that's all I can say. I think it starts to create, I think it slowly erodes, if not in some cases collapses your total self-confidence. I don't know. I think it's really interesting working with so many people over the years that I think it kind of has a compounding effect where the more messages that you send, the more complicated conversations that you are a part of, the more complicated things you need to communicate, the more follow-up questions that you have to those communications, and then therefore the more responses you have to send. I think and I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in a lot of like teammates. That has a cost. It will eventually corrode at people. And I think I do think it's very interesting. I I think just to kind of tangent a little bit here, I think I've noticed it just over the years that just work is just getting like more complicated. So it doesn't matter if it's email, it doesn't like matter if it's a conversation like, exchange. I guess what I'm trying to say is like in between text-based like communication and speech-based, it's just there's too many things going on. There's too many like nuances. Too many people have too many things to do. They don't have enough time to just communicate in general. But so having said all that, my ultimate point is this. I feel like specifically ChatGPT, and I know that there's like co-pilots out there and stuff like that. I'm just going to kind of just speak about Chat GPT because it was my first introduction and it's still kind of like my go-to. I don't know. I'll have another separate episode about artificial intelligence and all of that stuff at a later time. But sorry, let me get back to the point. I feel like the whole advent of artificial intelligence has now made it easier for people to communicate. I think maybe you can kind of just tell from the cadence in which I'm speaking. I've got a lot of things going on up here in my head, and I don't know. It's just really cool. I mean, ChatGPT has just allowed me to kind of keep this stream of consciousness of mine, so I can have a little bit more like messy thoughts, but then be able to kind of package them up in a way that is palatable, like for other people. I don't know, maybe I'll go into this in a separate episode, but like this podcast is I actually do just want it to be this stream of consciousness of sorts. Because I think that's just the best way to kind of explore, I don't know, complicated, like nuanced ideas. I think it's also just nice because this is the way that I typically think. And, I think it's just nice to have something like this podcast where I can, I guess, like be myself, or so to speak. But anyways, I tangented again. Let me come back to the point. Well, actually, let's read that question again so I can actually get back to it. What does it do to your confidence when you're always hoping your tone lands instead of owning it? I just think everybody wants to be heard. When you send out a message, you're hoping like that it lands, but there's a latency in between all of this, and you're gonna have to wait to get a response. And while you're waiting, that anxiety just ratchets up and increases, right? I guess you could say like owning it. I don't know. I don't think maybe this isn't even really the right question, or maybe it just spawns a whole different question, but it's just I just think considering, let's bring this point home. My point is that text-based and speech-based communications both have pros and cons, and I think it's important to understand when each one of them should be used. Why does waiting for a response create more anxiety than the conversation itself? Okay, this is a fun one. Kind of like we were talking about in the previous topic, right? Like when you do something and you send it out, there's a latency, and therefore anxiety, I'm pretty sure in its definition, is fear of the future. So that's like literally the best example of like an anxiety situation. You know what I'm trying to say? Like you're literally doing something, not knowing what the outcome's going to be, and the latency is massive. Versus when you do speech-based communication, right, where you're talking to another person, you say something and you can get a response back from that person instantly, right? But you're not only getting words back like from that person, but you're getting all these other like signals. You're getting the body language, you're getting the cadence, the tone, all of that, right? And that's kind of helping you to understand where that person stands with what it is that you just said or did. And I think that's really important because I think that's how us humans communicate. I was kicking around this topic not too long ago, and a colleague of mine, when we were talking about it, he was talking about how there was some sort of experiment. I don't know when, but it was basically like what happens to infants when they're around people without a facial expression. I guess let me just kind of like paint the picture of what it is, right? Like just imagine you have a newborn like infant, can't speak, obviously. And I guess the experiment was just like, hey, like when they're around other human beings, um, what happens if you don't make a facial expression, right? You're just cold, expressionless, right? And the kids, would exhibit some sort of like stressors, whether it's like heart rate or just something regarding stress, right? Like versus the kids that, the infant would smile, the adult would smile back, or like cry or something. I don't know. But right, like what they just ultimately found was it's really dangerous for human beings when you exist in the world, when you are, I don't know, existing in the world, and you're not getting the feedback, right? I think I don't know. I think even as I just talked through that idea, that thought, that story, I think yeah, I think all of us can like resonate with that. I think yeah, I think it's just something to consider. I think it's let's bring this point home. I think it's really important that every individual understands what the costs are associated with speech based and text based communication and knowing when to apply it. Like, I think I've already said that in a few other points. So maybe that's also another like through line is that nothing is neither good nor bad. It's just understanding what the nuances of that thing are and then knowing when to appropriately apply it. How much time are we actually losing by trying to make written communication do what it was never like built for? Off the cuff, hours, if not like days or weeks. On top of that, just the bandwidth of your brain on a daily basis, like a weekly basis. Just like I'm just looking at just what the costs are of this mode of communication over extended amounts of time. Just, I don't know. How much time are we actually losing by trying to make written communication do what it was never like built for? Okay, let's answer this question in a more direct way. On a daily basis, I think it's hours. I think, God, just when there's we just look at the totality of like all of your communications throughout the years, right? I think I think if you really took a step back and like really like looked at all of that, I think man, I don't know. Let's bring this thought like fully home. I think it takes a lot of time. I think it takes a lot of effort on the person writing the message, on the person receiving and reading the message, only to then become the one to respond. And I think I don't know. I'm actually kind of curious about this. Maybe I'll explore this in another episode, or I'll find some sort of like study about it. But there's got to be a cost associated with this fracture based communication, right? Like, I don't know. Hear me out on this. And I'll maybe explore this in another episode. This is just how my brain thinks, because I have so many things that I have to take care of each day across all these different like domains and whatnot, right? So I have to, for me personally, I really like to group my work together so that I can like sit down, zone in, and get things done. But the way that my brain sees a conversation is it sees it as one thing, is have this conversation with this person, right? And it's going to be a messy thing. We're going to be exploring whatever topics. Cool, fine, great. But on the other hand, when, from just a task management perspective, right? Okay, I have to send an email. Okay, that's a task. I have to actually now pivot my attention to that task and do that. I click send. Great. Now, for me personally, I do have to actually write a reminder that, like, if I'm asking something from somebody, I do need to write down in my to-do list something along the lines of, awaiting so and so to respond, right? So, okay, I sent out that communication. Technically, let's just say it's kind of like a meta to do of, now I have to keep track of getting a response back. Okay, cool. Now I'm off doing my other thing. Now I got a response back. Okay, cool. So now I have to drop what I'm doing here, come back to this, send it out, get a response, question, answer the question, send back, question, send back. But you're doing that over X amount of time. And so that kind of adds to this hidden cost of context switching, which I'm definitely going to talk about that one in an upcoming episode. Yeah. You know what? Hell, I don't know. This is a stream of consciousness. Let's just talk about it right now, just for fun. And I swear to God, I will come back. Okay. Let's talk about context switching, because I do think that has a direct tie-in to text-based communication. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I don't really know how to like bring this point home. But just for fun, what's the number? I forgot how many like letters there are in the alphabet. I'm pretty sure there's 26. But hear me out on this. Right now, count in your head or out loud. I guess, if you're alone, like at home or whatever, it won't sound weird if you're talking out loud, but just, okay, either in your head or out loud, count as fast as you can, 1 through 26. Go. I probably should have been counting, so I could have just timed that out, but hell. Now, in your head, count as fast as you can or out loud. Go through the alphabet, A to Z, as fast as you can. Ready, go. All right, done. Cool. Okay, now alternate. So when I say alternate, go 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E. Do that as fast as you can, either out loud or in your head. Go. All right, I lost it at like F. Sure, maybe some of you guys did too. I forgot, I did like a competition with somebody. Somebody actually got kind of far, but it took them a while. Okay, so my point in that whole entire exercise is that's what happens when you're going in between different domains, is that there's this cost associated between switching versus when you're doing one focused thing the whole way through, you can fly through it. Now, okay, let's bring this back to the email communication. So I don't know if really this analogy holds. I'm gonna have to probably like think about it a little bit more, or I guess this comparison. But when you're having that in-person speech-based communication with somebody, like that's like you counting 1 to 26 like as fast as you can, or like going A to Z as fast as you can. Like it's like there's just flow. It's happening, right? It's natural. It's the same contextual kind of thing. It's that one conversation. Versus the text-based is, in its very like nature, it is a splinter-based thing. So like, let's just say that you're sending emails. Like it's kind of, I don't want to get too far on this, but it's just like, think about when you're having to like address all the emails like in your inbox. Each one of those emails is a specific subject. So now you're like writing this email. I don't really think that this comparison holds up, because the domain is still generally the same of writing emails, but maybe something that I'll just kind of explore in the future. But I do realize I've kind of spoken a lot about this topic, so let's just try to bring this one home. Okay, so how much time are we actually losing by trying to make written communication do what it was never like built for. I think we're losing a lot of time. I think it's important to remember which mode is best considering the circumstance. And I think when it comes to text-based communication, try to lean into Chat GPT. And yeah. What does texting or email hide that a real conversation makes instantly clear? Okay, so as I read that question, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, I guess an investment in the topic. Like, what does texting or email hide that a real conversation makes instantly clear? I think it's really hard to understand what somebody's emotional relationship is to whatever the topic is in the conversation, like in the text-based conversation. I think oh my God, it's crazy. I think I've noticed it myself. I've noticed it with like other people. I've noticed it throughout the years. It's kind of everywhere. And I think it's just a part of the human condition. But like, if you're trying to express yourself, if you're trying to express yourself or express an idea, like you're hoping that it lands. Okay, cool. So like you have an emotional investment along that, or you have an emotional investment that's inherently a part of that. Okay, cool. But now we're involving emotions, and I just think my point, that's like what's in my head right now, is much like the baby, the infant analogy. I don't know, or whatever the comparison, right? Oh man, I just think what I'm trying to get at is this. I think that there's a level of projection associated with text-based communication, right? I think something like, what does texting or email hide that a real conversation makes instantly clear? I think it just hides the emotional investment, or like the emotional weight, or like how that person like feels about the topic, right? I just think, like, you could write a message to somebody and you could really care about what the topic is, right? You could have like a really authentic, positive, just good intentions, right? But say, for instance, it's phrased in a certain way, like nobody can read your body language. Maybe you're a little too cold. But like, here's the thing though, like what we need to understand about the text-based communication, and really just like communication in general, is that the person on the receiving end is bringing like, I guess, call it like baggage of their own. And I don't mean that in like a positive way or a negative way. I just mean it as like they're bringing certain attributes with them by partaking in the conversation, again, whether it's speech-based or text-based. And I just think that when you go the text-based route, you're losing a lot of the human element that comes along with that. And I just think by its very nature, the fact that it is technically still an exchange of two people. So like, when you send a message out, you're looking for a message back. And so like, you're getting really anxious writing the thing because you want it to land. Cool. But by default, the person on the receiving end who does need to actually solicit a response, they actually do need to get a response back to you. They also want their point to land. And so you're like, it's like these people on like two opposite sides of the world, just like hoping and praying that, like, hey, I hope my message is understood from the get-go, and that I don't have to send another like response. God, I don't know. Again, just zooming out on this whole thing, the level of complexity and like the nuance of work in the modern era is becoming increasingly more complex, and we just need to do a better job of really communicating in more efficient and effective ways. I think, I don't know, it's interesting even in this podcast, right? Because like, you're hearing me think through in real time all of these thoughts, but I really hope that I guess from like a frameworks perspective, right, is that, and this is kind of the reason why I want the podcast to be structured like this, is that like I'm having this like messy thought. This is just how my brain works. I'm having a messy thought, kind of exploring all of these ideas over here. And I go, okay, cool. Thought. Okay, what's the through line here? Okay, it's just understanding the modes and then when to apply those modes. So I don't know. I don't know if I really answered that question, but I kind of like the way where I ended it. So yeah. How do we stop treating communication like a draft and start treating it like a human exchange again? All right, let's read that one back. How do we stop treating communication like a draft and start treating it like a human exchange again? Okay, interesting question. Brain's kind of going all over the place. The first thing that I just keep coming back to, which it's been like the through line in all of this, is just, I think it's just understanding. I think it's just understanding how each of these modes works and like when to apply them and what the potential like pitfalls are, or like the watch outs, right? Like there's certain costs, there's certain costs associated, or like risks or trade-offs, or like so to speak, of speech-based communication and text-based. And I think it's just I don't know, like, how do we stop treating communication like a draft and start treating it like a human exchange again? I think it's just important that like maybe in this modern era of work that maybe we need to take a more macro view on this topic and just realize that like there's a skill deficiency in both. And what I'm noticing right now, and I just have noticed over the years, is that it's like, hey, I don't have time for a conversation, so send it to me in email. But then, this crazy black hole of email exchanges ensues and nothing ever gets resolved. Okay, alternative. Guys, let's take this out of email and let's have a meeting about it. Okay. And we've all seen this. Now you got a meeting on your calendar for, you got an invite on your calendar for a meeting that was supposed to be an hour, and all of a sudden it became 2 hours. And people are talking the whole time. And like, well, that's a whole other episode. But nothing's really getting done. It's this collective, larger, it's this almost collective stream of consciousness where it's like, man, I barely have enough time and space to do it with just me on just this podcast alone. Imagine doing it in a room full of multiple people. Holy smokes. And so I think that there's a level of frustration that comes along with that. And when I just walk the whole thing back and I look at what's going on here, it's just there's a deficiency in skill of how to apply the proper mode, right? I think it's really important, like maybe in the text-based mode, that people understand how to use AI to kind of help, generate their thoughts in a text-based form. I think when it comes to speech-based, I think, I don't know, maybe that's a skill set too. Definitely by doing this podcast, I've been trying to figure out how to make my thoughts a little bit more like succinct. So I'm not kind of going into that stream of consciousness as much as I typically do. But I don't know. It's interesting as I think back, over the past like maybe like 12 months of like meetings and exchanges with, again, partners and teams from all over the place. I just think, God, I don't know. Maybe we just kind of forgot how to be human. That's kind of a weird way to end this episode, but it's like, did we just forget what it means? Did we just forget what it means to listen to another person, to think about a response and then give it. And because we lost that skill set, did we just default to the path of least resistance, which would then be the text-based communication? But then because of that, we've actually increased or widened the gap, so to speak, of human to human connection. And now, this is now turning into like a deeper topic, but I don't know. I do think that there is actually something there where maybe we just forgot what it means to connect with each other. And hey, you know what? Even as I'm thinking about that, again, the level of complexity of work has been exponentially increasing over the years. And so I think because of that, maybe that there's more of that becomes another driving force between leaning on the path of least resistance, which is the text-based communication. And I think, I don't know, maybe we're just at a point right now where we need to revisit all of that, and we need to try to get an understanding of why do we gravitate towards certain modes versus others. I think, let's just bring this point home. How do we stop treating communication like a draft and start treating it like a human exchange again? How do we stop treating communication like a draft and start treating it like a human exchange again? It's kind of a funny thing as I'm reading it and I'm drafting a response in my head. It's that's the very nature of the question. I just thought that was kind of a funny thing. But hey, I gotta read it one more time just so I can actually get the final thought across. How do we stop treating communication like a draft and start treating it like a human exchange again? The thing that just comes to mind is that we just need to remember what it means to be human beings communicating with one another, what it means to listen, and to just be respectful of other people's time. I think if we all kind of remember those things, I think we could see some improvements. I don't know. I'll wrap up the question here. I think I definitely want to explore this topic a little bit more, and I'll figure out a way to kind of, we kind of talked about this pod of stuff here, and there was two offshoots to other topics, and I'll figure out some way to kind of transition us over to that so we can explore those things more. But I think just, yeah, let's just end that question there. That's a good place to end. Yeah. All right, guys, let's find an off-ramp for this episode. These were a lot of really interesting questions to kind of explore and go through. I don't know. I think I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I think it's been kind of a fun thing for me because I'm a human first above all things, and I think it's really interesting how a lot of this work, all of these things, really just tie back to certain attributes of what it means to be a human and to connect with other people. I mean, just the very nature of work is you have a group of people that are trying to work together in a cooperative way towards a common goal. There's nothing more human than that. And I don't know, I think it's sick. I think it's really cool. And I think it was fun to kind of explore this topic and see where it took us. And yeah, I don't know. I think if this is your first episode, trying to figure out which side I was going to go first. If this is your first episode, I appreciate you checking it out and tuning in. Check out maybe the first episodes to kind of just get a general understanding of what this podcast is all about. And maybe because you probably picked up on it throughout this episode, the kind of speech impediments, me saying a lot, which is what's called a crash word. I explained all of that in episode number 2, in which I kind of explained this condition I have, which is a timing-based stutter. And you'll start to understand why I say the word so much because of that. If you're tuning in again, thank you so much for coming back. Stoked that you're here. And yeah, I think just appreciate your guys' time. I really hope that you gleaned something from this episode. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you, everybody.